All right, so we're going to go over what does it look like for the buyer timeline. So a little bit of this is up to you, and then there are a little bit of definitive parameters for that timeline. So here we go. Very first thing you need to do is get your pre-approval. So we have a great list of lenders that we've worked with. I'd be happy to refer you to them. I would say call around, talk to a few of them, and go, who do I feel most comfortable with? And they'll walk you through what that loan looks like. They're going to give you a fee sheet. They're going to show you how much you're going to spend, what you're going to need to pay out of pocket. They're also going to ask you for your taxes, W-2s, pay stubs, and some information like that to look at your debt to income ratio, your credit score, and your employment history. So you're going to need all of that stuff ready. So go ahead and start putting that stuff together, and then your lender can get that turned around in like a day or so. So it'll be really quick. Sometimes the day of, if you have everything they need. So get your pre-approval started. That's really just up to you on the timeline. And then we can get your search going, because then after you have pre-approval, you know exactly how much money you can spend. You're going to know what that monthly payment's going to look like on that house, because you understand that at that rate, this is what it's going to look like to pay that per month. And then the next thing that we're going to do is, when you find that right house, we are going to submit a purchase offer. And so at the purchase offer, when that begins, we typically write that up for a definitive amount of time. So when the buyer and the seller agree on a purchase price, we're going to write it up to say we're going to close in 30 days from now or 45 days from now, and that's pretty standard. There are some situations where maybe you need to get your house sold first, so it takes a little longer. Maybe there's a move incorporated with this. Maybe the seller is waiting for their house, them to find a house. So there's some conditions like that, but generally speaking, we're looking at 30 to 45 days on that. So as soon as we have agreed on that, buyer and seller have signed, starts the inspection period. And typically on the inspection period, that can be written up however you want, but typically we write it for 10 to 15 business days. So we're very specific on the number of days, but anywhere in between there. So we go, hey, we'd like 15 business days. The seller might go, well, we'd rather have this done in 12 days so we know for sure what we're looking at. And so we have everybody come out then. So you do the general inspection. So if there's anybody else you need to have come out, termite, radon, if you need to have an electrician look at something, you can have all that done in that time period. And at the end of that period, when we have all the inspections done, then we submit what's called a repair request. So if something does come up, this gives you, the buyer, the opportunity to go, hey, this is really concerning, and so we want you to fix this. So we negotiate at that point to go, hey, we're going to change the price, or we're going to ask the seller to pay to fix something before closing. And so once again, we have to agree to those terms. So the seller and the buyer has to agree to it. You can't just go, hey, I want you to do this, and they're not tied or bound to doing anything. But you have to get an agreement there. So once we're able to work through that and get to that point, then we're ready pretty much to go to closing, but then we're going to do a final walkthrough. We're going to make sure that any of the agreements here are completed before we close. So we're going to do a final walkthrough, look through the house. Typically we're going to do that the day before or the day of closing. And so then 30 to 45 days out, we're ready to close. And so that is basically it. At closing table, you're going to want all of your out-of-pocket expenses. You're going to need your down payment and your closing costs. So those are the things you're going to have ready. You'll know what those are when you're going through pre-approval. The lender will say, hey, we're going to charge you $500 out of pocket for the appraisal. You're going to spend about $500 for the inspection, and then your earnest money that you put down at the offer is about $500. So typically I tell people, hey, $1,500 ready out of pocket, and then have your closing expenses ready at closing. So that's your down payment and your closing costs. So depending on how we write up the contract, what's agreed to, this number at closing is going to change in regard to your out-of-pocket expenses. But basically, this is your timeline. This is what you're looking at. So I hope that helps you get ready to buy your next house.